Yanaka is Tokyo's very own cat town, a traditional and quiet neighborhood in the largest city on earth, where cats have been the staple of the place's branding strategy for decades. If you try to look for information about Yanaka on newspapers, documentaries, magazines, whatever, on the internet, you'll most likely find that the place is home to hundreds of stray cats. However, there are no stray cats left in Yanaka. Now, why there are no cats left in Yanaka? Especially taking into account that Yanaka is known as the cat town. So in today's video we will answer the following question. First, what is Yanaka and why is it called a cat town? Second, why are there no cats anymore in Yanaka? And third, why is it relevant to talk about cats from an urban and local policy perspective? So without further ado, let's jump. Yanaka is a neighborhood of around 8,000 inhabitants, more or less, located in Taito, one of the 23 special wards that exist in the Tokyo metropolis, which has around 200,000 inhabitants. It is also part of the district of Yanesen, which is known for its traditional style and antiquated temple district style. Cats are Yanaka's main theme and the staple of the town's branding strategy, which attracts an increasingly number of tourists every year, thanks to its quaint but attractive and cute aesthetic, resulting from the combination of the traditional atmosphere and the cat paraphernalia. In Yanaka Ginza, the main shopping street of the town, and its most well-known touristic checkpoint, you'll find many small cute cafeterias and many small shops selling traditional Japanese candies and sweets, street food, ceramics and other traditional crafts. Yanaka Ginza Street is full of cat statues, and wherever you look, you'll probably find cat-related products like cat paw-shaped chocolates, cat tail-shaped donuts, or cat jewelry, amongst many other things. Yanaka Ginza is the most crowded place in the town. However, the rest of the neighborhood is mainly a residential area where you can enjoy the many small shrines scattered around Yanaka. The image of the high-tech Tokyo that we're so used to see in documentaries just completely disappears in this town. The low buildings and narrow winding streets retain the atmosphere and vibe of the Showa era. Because of that, Yanaka seems to be suspended in time, in a Tokyo where everything is fast, new, flashy, and constantly changing. Yanaka is also one of the few areas in Tokyo that survived the earthquakes, the fires, and even the air raids during the World War II, thus preserving a particular atmosphere known as Shitamachi. What does Shitamachi mean? Well, Shitamachi, it literally means low city, and is one of the traditional areas of Tokyo. The other one being Yamanote, which can be translated as mountain hand, referring to the hilly area that lies going west from there. These terms became prevalent back in the Edo period, and nowadays there is not a consensus on where Shitamachi or Yamanote start and end, geographically speaking. But to put it simply, for the sake of the video, Yamanote was the high ground where the warrior caste lived, whereas Shitamachi was the marshy lowland where the commoners, the lower castes, that is merchants and artisans, lived. In some way, the division between the samurai and the commoners has carried on into the modern life. What do I mean by that? Nowadays, Yamanote still represents the modern, rather westernized way of Tokyo's life, whereas Shitamachi represents the traditional, rather communal way of life. Shitamachi is also currently associated with blue-collar workers, while on the other hand, Yamanote is usually associated with business executives, office workers, and so famous salarymen. So it's like in Yamanote, now samurais have been replaced by white-collar workers. So there is a symbolical social class analogy associated to these two terms, aside from the historical and geographical differences that they have. It is in these quiet residential areas, away from the bustle and noise from Yanaka, the main shopping street, where the legend of the cat town was actually forged. Unfortunately, there is not a single official reason of why so many real stray cats decided to make Yanaka a home for themselves, thus giving birth to the legend of Yanaka the cat town. However, there might be a connection between the presence of real stray cats and Yanaka's shitamachi atmosphere. In Yanaka, stray cats were away from the city bustle, the noise, the large crowds, the cars, etc., etc. In this part of the city, you can still find the conditions to enjoy Tokyo's quiet life, even if that sounds like something impossible from a tourist, ignorant perspective. So apparently, this quiet, calm shitamachi atmosphere, along with the fact that the locals took well care of the stray cats for decades, actually incentivized the stray cats to live there. The residents were able to capitalize on this reality, making the cats the main theme of the shopping area of Yanaka Ginza. This way they were able to create a wide array of cat-related products. Consequently, the neighborhood had its own brand enhanced, and they could attract more and more tourists and customers to the area, thus stimulating the local economy. According to the many blogs, YouTube channels, magazines that have covered Yanaka's reality, the place is full of stray cats. So it made sense for me to check this reality personally. So I decided to sacrifice myself for this noble cause, and hell, even for you, and I went to Japan. And among the many places that I could visit in Japan, I went specifically to Yanaka to check it out. Because it's also true that many of those posts, articles and videos made about Yanaka were recorded and written before the pandemic, so things might have changed. At least that's what I thought. The most important and expected result of my little adventure there is that there are no cats left there. Yep, from my experience, there were no cats anywhere in Yanaka. Nowhere. I spent hours strolling around the cemetery because people said that cats tended to gather also around the cemetery because it was a quiet part of the neighborhood, understandably. Of course, paying my respects to the families and people that were there and behaving as a proper human being, only to find no stray cats. I spent hours patrolling Yanaka's small alleys, far away from the main shopping area, only to find no cats. Maybe a few years ago the situation wasn't like that. I cannot confirm it and I cannot deny it. And that's important. I am not implying that all those posts, articles and videos are lying. Not at all. Because the situation might have been different back then and things might have changed. And I did not find any official answer to the absence of cats in the neighborhood. However, we might find answers if we take a look at how other Japanese local authorities have dealt with similar issues. That is, we can take a look at the different urban and local policies implemented to control the populations of stray and feral cats. Because as you'll see, the absence of cats might be easier to understand if we take a look at the complex challenges entailed by the proper management of urban ecosystems. And that is the reason why talking about cats is relevant from an urban, local, even smart city perspective, because of urban ecosystems. If you wish so, I can do a video about this, but just to summarize it, an urban ecosystem is the group of living beings that interact with each other and with the non-living elements of the urban settlement in which they live. In other words, it is about the interaction of the biotic and abiotic elements of a particular space and how they interact with each other. Every single city, town or urban settlement can be conceived as a system, and when a system is comprised of living beings, it is called ecosystem. Therefore, urban ecosystems are the ecosystems that stem from urban settlements. Cats are obviously a very common biotic element, to speak in scientific terms, not only in Japan, but almost everywhere in the world, because cats are found almost everywhere. Even if we can argue that the presence of free-ranging cats, that is, own pets that are allowed to roam outdoors, stray cats or feral cats, bring a set of positive impacts to our urban ecosystems, most of the studies done in this regard are very clear. The negative impacts of the presence of free-ranging cats to our urban ecosystems are far greater than the positive ones. Regarding the positive impacts, it is true that cats can act as natural pest controllers, thus keeping in check those pests like rats or mice, minimizing the risk of disease transmission and crop damage, especially if they're in rural areas, and they can also be a big help to control populations of invasive species. However, cats roaming around freely have many different negative impacts, unfortunately, on our urban ecosystems. For instance, cats can threaten the small local wildlife ecosystem and even lead many small mammals and birds to their extinction. Cats can also alter local food chains, either directly by means of their hunting trips or indirectly through an increase of the competition, that is, because they eat the same animals as other local species that were already part of that ecosystem, or through fear. They can expose their prey, other animals, to other predators and make them adopt behaviors that actually make them more vulnerable. Thirdly, cats can also spread diseases to other vertebrates, that is, including human beings, like toxoplasmosis, rabies, or felinosis, which is also known as the cat scratch disease. And finally,
hybridization,
that can lead to genetic swamping. That is, and I'm gonna read it literally because I don't want to mess it up. Interbreeding with domestic cats produces hybrid populations in which no remaining individuals can properly be described as the native wild cat species. Of course, there are other negative impacts, but these are just the most prominent ones. So given that the negative impacts clearly outbalance the positive impacts, this is something that has to be dealt with. And the way to tackle this issue is, of course, by means of public policies. All Japanese public authorities, and particularly local governments, local authorities, are aware of the problems that stray cats, free-ranging cats, can bring to urban ecosystems, because Japanese public authorities, public administrations, have already created and implemented many different programs and strategies to tackle this issue for many years now. In front of this problem, we should wonder, what is the goal that local governments want to achieve by implementing cat-related policies? From my perspective, it is about to drastically reduce the number of non-owned cats, that is, cats without owner, as well as preventing them from reproducing too much in order to protect the urban ecosystems of those places. Therefore, the desirable outcome of these policies should be, first, the preservation of biodiversity, then the protection of the fauna of that urban ecosystem, prevent the spread of diseases, and have an effective control of the population of free-ranging cats. Now, when it comes to specifically non-domestic cats without an owner, we should differentiate between stray cats and feral cats. A stray cat is a domestic cat that strayed from home and became lost or was abandoned. Instead, a feral cat is either a domestic cat that was lost or abandoned and that has reverted to a wilder state, or a cat that was born to a stray or feral mother and had little or no human contact at all. As you can imagine, feral cats are very difficult to tame and usually they're not suitable for adoption. However, in the case of Yanaka specifically, we're talking about stray cats, not feral cats. So that, of course, will condition the policies that can be implemented to deal with this issue. Because the stray cat was once a companion animal, they usually can be resocialized and then placed in adoptive homes. I unfortunately do not know what exactly happened in Yanaka, but I do know a few things that can help us to understand what happened. First, what Yanaka's civil society has done so far, as well as the initiatives that they have implemented and that can actually be seen around the town. And second, what Japanese authorities have done in other similar places in order to control the population of free-ranging cats. Regarding the policies implemented by Japanese authorities, it is undeniable that they sacrifice, euthanize dogs and cats at surprising high rates every year. According to the Ministry of Environment of Japan, in 2022, 9,472 cats were sacrificed in Japan. That is 31% of the cats picked up by the Japanese authorities from the streets. It might not seem like a big number, but let's take a closer look at the whole table provided by the ministry itself. Now, these numbers are big, very big. We're saying that in 2020, which is not that far away, 44% of the cats that were picked up from the streets were killed by Japanese public authorities. As far as I've seen it, the Japanese animal protection law establishes that the national government must take care of the pets when the owners ask for it, so as to avoid the abandonment of those pets. The result, many owners do not come back for the pets, and the facilities where the animals are being kept, the so-called animal protection centers, end up being so full of cats and dogs that the national government needs to reduce their numbers. So, these poor pets get euthanized. Maybe this cruel reality could be prevented with an increase of the budget, but anyway, reality is what it is, and the numbers don't lie. If we also take into account that the rabies protection law provides for this slaughter in order to prevent the spread of rabies, then the killing rates increase even more. Of course, the situation would be better if many other different things would take place. For example, the situation would improve if pet owners actually stopped abandoning their pets. The situation would improve if the government didn't make it easy for the owners to abandon their pets. More regulations could also improve this situation with regards to limiting the business of pet shops, which are abundant in Japan and which also abandon the sick and old animals that can't be sold anymore. And of course, something that we do know that was happening in Yanaka a few years ago, and that is that the locals actually fed the stray cats. Of course, out of fondness, out of wanting to take care of those cats, but nevertheless, they did feed them. There are reporting of locals hiding bowls of food either in the cemetery or in the small alleys to feed the stray cats. But even if the intentions of doing so are inherently good, the consequences are not, unfortunately, because this always leads to an increase of their population. And of course that entails all the negative impacts that we've mentioned previously. However, the table of the ministry also indicates something interesting: the significant increase of the adoption rates. In 2022, of the 30,401 cats that were picked up, 20,471 were returned or transferred. That is, a 67% of the total. And how's that? Well, it is commonly known that private volunteers and NGOs have played a key role in this regard. These organizations have been very important when it comes to keeping and retrieving those stray cats. These actions not only have they been very important for getting back the cats from the animal protection centers, but also to prevent those stray cats from ending up there. Local NGOs and private volunteers also significantly contribute to spreading awareness on the ground about the situation of stray cats and what people can do to help improve the cats' lives and the reality of their neighborhoods. Yanaka's population are still playing their part in improving the lives of those cats. There are also many signs around the town and the cemetery asking for people not to abandon their pets, and informing of the legal consequences of doing so. Because yes, it is illegal to directly abandon animals in Japan. Last but not least, there is another element that we should take into account when we try to understand why the number of sacrifices is decreasing in Japan according to official data. This element is actually a non-lethal instrument aimed at preventing the breeding of stray cats that is also applied in many other parts of the world, and this instrument is called the TNR method. This method consists of trapping the cats, neutering and spaying them, and then returning them to an appropriate place, an appropriate habitat where to live. These cats are scanned for microchips, vaccinated, microchipped in case that they do not have a microchip, and then ear-tipped. In this sense, it's very easy to identify these cats because they are marked with a V-shaped cut in one of their ears. This mark resembles a cherry blossom petal, being the reason why the treated cats are also called Sakura cats, the cherry blossom cats. The TNR method is rarely implemented alone or in an isolated way. Instead, this method is usually part of the commonly known as community cat programs, CCP. Japanese authorities have been implementing this kind of public policy for many years now, which has helped to significantly reduce the numbers of cats being euthanized. Under these programs, cats do not have a specific owner, but rather the local residents take good care of them, collectively, together. In Japan, cats that are part of a community cat program are called chikinekos, which literally means local cats. These cats spend their lives living in the community that has adopted them, that is, with other former stray cats that now are neutered and spayed, so they cannot breed. And the people from the neighborhood takes good care of that community. It's also interesting from an urban ecosystem perspective to mention that community cats also serve as a barrier, a deterrent to feral cats. Being castrated does not mean that cats cease to be territorial, and they will protect their territory and community from cats that are not part of it, such as feral cats. This policy has many scientific studies providing empirical evidence of its effectiveness. This being the main reason why the CCP, the community cat programs, are not only being implemented in Japan, but also in many other parts of the world. Unfortunately, I could not find specific data about Yanaka, and I don't speak Japanese either, or information about the specific policies that contributed the most to such noticeable and significant reduction of the population of stray cats in Yanaka. But we can assume that probably it was the combination of the unfortunate euthanizing policies that are still being implemented nowadays in Japan, as the data provided by the Ministry of Environment shows, and the non-lethal policies carried out in Japan like the CCPs, which are more than welcome in a neighborhood that was so fond of its stray cats. After all, Yanaka is still called the cat town. Examining Yanaka's case, it is possible to grasp the importance of how the culture of a particular place actually shapes an urban settlement. And by culture I mean the beliefs, values and behaviors of a particular group of people living in a certain place. How the reality of an urban ecosystem can actually have positive benefits for the city branding and the local economy of that territory, as well as how the implementation of local policies can sometimes be so complex and so contradictory with the culture of a particular place when it comes to dealing with a series of unavoidable challenges, because as we've seen, this was the case of cats. The logistics of Yanaka, as well as the culture of the local residents, incentivized the settlement of stray cats in the neighborhood, which found a quiet traditional Shitamachi-like town where to stay and breed, which resulted in a boost of the popularity of the place, as well as a boost of its own town branding, which made it necessary for local authorities to actually intervene, to take measures and implement policies for dealing with those negative externalities. And from a smart city perspective, I think there are important lessons to learn from this experience. For example, Yanaka shows us how the biotic elements of a particular urban ecosystem, like a stray cat, can actually contribute to the enhancement not only of its territorial branding, but also to construct a sound identity shared by almost all of the residents of that place. An identity that is in harmony with its environment and the urban ecosystem. The residents were fond of these animals, and even now if you go to Yanaka and like me, you find no cats, you will still be able to see how the locals care for the cats and still deeply value their legacy. And this, in my opinion, leads to another important lesson that can actually be applied to all cities from all over the world. Any city that does not pay attention to its urban ecosystem cannot be considered as smart at all. Because the smart thing to do is to take care of the environment and the surroundings in which we live. For me, a city or a town that actually takes care of its flora and fauna, that is, its urban ecosystem, is way smarter than a city that completely forsakes this aspect of city life and just focuses on implementing the new tech, the highest top-notch new tech for the territory, just completely forgetting about taking care of the habitat and the environment. That's not a smart thing to do, because we live in this place. Those cities that do not take care of the urban ecosystems in the long term are doomed. These cities, they may attract lots of people due to tax advantages, economic and professional opportunities, or even for sheer strategic reasons. But cities are meant to be lived in. If living there just sucks, people will not stay there for a long time. At least from a historical perspective and in the long term. I know that there are many new smart cities being created nowadays. They might be smart because they incorporate the newest tech into the management of the territory. But what is not that obvious is that these places, these settlements, these facilities can actually be called cities. They might be big company facilities that extend like a city. They might be financial districts meant to just go there to work, but the city is ultimately what the people that live in there make it. If there is no community consistently exchanging ideas, feelings, products, services, then it is not a city. It is something entirely else. And we should never lose sight of what makes cities, places still worth living in. At least these are my thoughts. And now, I would like to know your thoughts. So I encourage you to please share your ideas and thoughts in the comments down below. And if you liked this video, consider giving it a like, it helps us a lot, our content creators, especially when we are starting. And consider subscribing for more content. Thank you very much, and see you around. Peace.